He spoke perfect French. His passport had real stamps. And yet, his country didn't exist. In July 1954, a man arrived at Tokyo's Haneda airport with a passport from Taured, a nation no one had ever heard of. Immigration officers were confused. The passport was genuine. The man seemed calm. He insisted his country was real. When they detained him overnight, something impossible happened. By morning, he was gone. No escape route, no explanation, no trace. This is a case that official records never solve. And today, we're going to revisit it. Was he lying, delusional, or something else entirely? If you believe our world hides more than it reveals, stay with us. It began like any routine customs screening. A man arrived at Haneda Airport in Tokyo on a warm day in July 1954. He appeared European, wore a gray business suit, and carried a briefcase. When asked for his passport, he handed over a document from a country called Taured. The Japanese officials were confused. The passport looked real, professionally bound, official stamps, and entry visas from multiple countries. But there was a problem. No such country existed. When asked to point out on a map, the man confidently placed his finger on the border between France and Spain, the region where Andorra is located. But he seemed puzzled when told that Taured was not on the map. He didn't appear to be joking or disoriented. On the contrary, he was calm, fluent in French and several other languages, and claimed to be on a business trip, one he said he had made many times before. His wallet contained international currency. His documents included a driver's license from Taured, a company ID, and a checkbook from a bank no one had heard of, yet all appeared authentic. Immigration authorities, unsure of how to proceed, placed him in a hotel room under guard. What followed has never been fully explained. What made the case so unusual was the confidence and clarity of the man's demeanor. He wasn't confused or distressed. On the contrary, he seemed irritated, frustrated that the customs officials didn't recognize his country. He had detailed knowledge of international business, travel procedures, and even Japanese customs laws. He spoke as someone who had done this many times before in this very airport. To the officials, this wasn't a person suffering from a delusion. It was someone who truly believed the impossible, that Taured was real. The man was held overnight in a high-rise hotel room. 2 immigration officers stood outside his door. There was no balcony, no air vents large enough to escape through. The only way out was past the guards. And yet, by morning, the room was empty. The man had vanished. His belongings, including his passport and documents, were gone as well. No signs of struggle. No footprints. Nothing recorded. An investigation was launched. Hotel staff were questioned. Surveillance was reviewed. Nothing. The room had remained locked from the outside. No one had entered or exited. Yet somehow, the man had disappeared and taken every trace of his presence with him. Even stranger, there was no record of his flight or arrival. The paperwork he had submitted, gone from the files. Some customs officials claimed they had seen him. Others denied it. It was as if he had never existed. The incident never made headlines. There was no press release, only whispers among officials, scattered mentions in obscure publications, and later a legend. The man from Taured had entered the country. He had been detained and then erased. No one ever saw him again. Years later, the story resurfaced, not as an unsolved immigration case, but as something stranger. Some theorists propose an idea. What if the man wasn't from our world? The multiverse theory, proposed in quantum mechanics, suggests the existence of parallel universes, alternate versions of reality where small historical changes create vastly different worlds. In one such world, perhaps, Taured exists. Could the man have slipped through some kind of rift, an accidental travel between dimensions? It sounds impossible, but his confusion, the way he reacted to the map, his insistence that he had been to Japan many times before, seems to point to someone who believed every word he said. He wasn't trying to deceive. He was convinced he was right. The idea of travelers between worlds is not new. Folklore, ancient mythology, and even religious texts often speak of messengers or strangers who appear, speak in unfamiliar terms, and then vanish. The man from Taured may simply be a modern echo of an older pattern. And perhaps, if dimensions do overlap, such crossings happen more often than we imagine. Other cases have surfaced over the years. People speaking languages no one recognizes. Individuals with detailed knowledge of events that never happened. At least not in our version of history. Some are dismissed, others are forgotten. But they share something in common. They don't quite fit. Maybe, in his world, we're the ones who are wrong. But not everyone agrees on the interdimensional angle. Another theory suggests the entire incident may have been part of a psychological experiment, a Cold War-era test of response protocols, or even a staged event orchestrated by intelligence agencies. The 1950s were a time of deep paranoia, espionage, disinformation campaigns. Governments were testing the limits of perception, propaganda, and social manipulation. Was the man from Taured an agent? A decoy? A fabricated myth inserted into the historical record to distract, disorient, or control? The Japanese government at the time was re-establishing national security structures under pressure from American influence. Could this have been a foreign intelligence test, measuring reaction to anomalies? Some believe the story's vagueness, the lack of photographs, the unnamed officials, is precisely the point. When a mystery has no center, it can't be disproven. And in an age where governments weaponize uncertainty, perhaps creating an untraceable man was the entire objective. There's precedent. Operation Northwoods, MK Ultra, false flag operations. History is filled with moments where the unbelievable turned out to be true, long after the public had moved on. There is no official file on the man from Taured. No photo, no fingerprint, no definitive source. The entire story lives in the margins, scattered among second-hand accounts, obscure publications, and conspiracy forums. And yet it endures. Why? Because it reflects something deeper, a fracture in our understanding of reality. Whether it was a case of delusion, deception, or dimensional crossing, the man from Taured remains unsolved. And maybe that's why the story matters. Because it forces us to ask, how stable is the world we live in? How much of it depends on shared agreements, names, borders, documents that can vanish with a stamp or a lie? What if the world is more fluid than we think? The idea of a man arriving from a non-existent country strikes at our most basic assumptions. That borders are fixed, that maps are absolute, that identity is something we can verify. But if those things can fail, even once, then how many other failures go unnoticed? Maybe he was never meant to be found. Maybe found his way back. Or maybe he never existed at all. But the question remains. What if one day someone else arrives with a passport that shouldn't exist? And this time we believe them.